Immigrants built this country, literally. Uh, actually, so this is for them, for all children of immigrants. This is also for those who came to this country in search of better opportunity to be a part of a nation that promised freedom for all and equal opportunity to everyone willing to work for it. Thank you for bringing your culture, your music, your stories, and your traditions here. You give America color. I love y'all so much. Thank you.
So he thinks that immigrants build America, right? But these kind of statements carry weight, and depending on who is listening, it can erase others' history that are just as real. Now, let's look at another moment where the same idea was pushed, this time in a political setting.
New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant.
So you've heard this idea again that immigrants built America, that immigrants built New York, and this is where the pushback starts, because saying that only immigrants built America leaves out a huge part of the story. The people who were in America for centuries, forced to work for free, with no wages, no land, no credit, no recognition. And that's why many Black Americans responded, not with hate, but with facts. Now, let's listen to these Americans. I will come back at the end.
One of the sentiments I've noticed online over the past couple of years is that everyone across the world associates America with immigration, and they think nothing is indigenous to America. Like Americans don't have food, Americans don't have culture, Americans don't have anything that is unique to here. And they don't do that for any of the other countries in the Americas, whether it be the Caribbean or South America. And I understand why that is. It's because American hegemony has ran the world for the last century. And with that, American culture and American story has become synonymous with pop culture. So people don't feel the need to divulge and dig deeper. There is no reality that anyone who is a descendant of those formerly enslaved Black Americans in America could be an immigrant. We are the product of forced migration to the New World, and we are one of the foundational Americans. I said previously that the only foundational Americans when this country was created are Black Americans, Native Americans, and those original European descendants. Anyone that came later is an immigrant. Immigration and immigration means leaving a country voluntarily to move and settle somewhere else, whether it be permanently or with their hope of returning home. None of the countries in Africa existed when the slave trade was going on. So no one in the Americas could be an immigrant by definition. We have been in America prior to the inception of America being a country. I say that to say that doesn't erase immigrants from the story of America, because those Chinese and Japanese immigrants that came here helped expanded America westward, and without them, that wouldn't have occurred. The subsequent European migration that happened through Ellis Island helped develop all the major cities like Philadelphia, Detroit, Chicago, New York. Without our Filipino and Caribbean aunties, we wouldn't have any nurses to take care of us, without our Mexican and Central American compadres working in the farms, we wouldn't have access to food the way that we do have it, or tend your gardens, or tend your home. So there's so many things that add to the story of America, and immigrants are definitely at the core of the American system, the American story, and American history. But when we're telling that history, we have to tell it correctly, because no Black American will be offended by you saying immigrants definitely developed this country. They developed the country alongside Black people, but at its foundation, for centuries before immigrants came, Black people were here forcibly, free labor, forcibly. They helped develop these Fortune 500 companies, from cotton and tobacco farms, forcibly. All those other immigrants that came at least got paid. Whether they were paid pennies on a dollar, they were still paid, and they were never slaves. So when it comes to telling history correctly, especially during Black History Month, we have to say things correctly. And it's not a dig. I know what he meant, but a lot of people don't know what he meant, because I've seen comments saying, well, how are Black Americans not immigrants? You can't be immigrants in a country you were forced to come to. In the same way that Black Americans aren't immigrants, you would never call a Brazilian an immigrant, a Jamaican an immigrant, a Haitian an immigrant, a Dominican an immigrant. But for some reason, you guys can't seem to grasp that Black Americans are the same exact descendants of those who exist in the Caribbean and exists in South America. Happy Black History Month.
Shaboozey does country music. Country music was founded, discovered, and created by Black American people. Shaboozey, from what I know, is an African man. I believe he's Nigerian. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know for sure he's African. And over in Africa, why couldn't you pop in Africa? If y'all built this country, how did you know that there was any place to come to? You contradicted yourself, Shaboozey, by saying, oh, we were able to come here to seek better opportunity. That's because the country and the opportunity was already here because of Black Americans. I think it's so disrespectful. We already have to deal with whitewashing, the whitewashing of our history. A lot of our intellectual properties, our inventions, our ideas, and everything has been stolen by white people, and now we are subjected to it being stolen by immigrants. If this was a docile land with nothing on it, no infrastructure, no buildings, no culture, nothing, why would you come here? Before you even wanted to travel here or even think of an American dream, you, Shaboozey, with your super pigmented skin, you had to see Black Americans already doing it and accomplishing the dream to give you something to even look forward to, as well as every other immigrant that is not just a straight up Caucasian. And y'all hijacking the civil rights movement, talking about, oh, civil rights, we deserve civil rights. First of all, if you are illegal, you cannot go to any other country and be an illegal citizen, an illegal immigrant, and then feel entitled and demand that the natives, the people that's on the land allow you to steal their culture, and while feed it back to them, sell it back to them, and make it seem like they have absolutely nothing to do with it. This is very disrespectful. They try to discredit the fact that us, along with some of the pilgrims before the Ellis Islanders even came over here, when the conquistadors and all of them, we were the ones that was the labor force. Black American people, indigenous American people, y'all was called African American, whatever which way you want to turn the key, was the first labor force in the United States of America. We built all of this. Now, I'm not saying that y'all didn't come here and add, but if you walk into a house that's already built, did you build a house or did you maybe reinstall a light bulb? Did you create the electricity? Did you build the toilet or did you plunge the toilet when it was stopped up? Did you paint the house or did you repair the paint once the paint started chipping? Did you lay the wood or did you repair the wood or the tile that was on the floor that needed to be replaced? I'm so sick of this. It's like recolonization. And like y'all literally are trying to erase us. And I get it. ICE is a thing. Y'all are fighting. We're going real hard for people that's illegal, which I don't understand that either. Now, I could see if they literally were just out there assembling a task force, just rounding up Latinos, Hispanics, Africans, Caribbeans, Eurasians, Europeans, I would understand that. Immigrants got this immigrant superiority complex and they're trying to erase us. If all it takes is for y'all to bring y'all culture and make the world more colorful, then your own country should be lit up like a Christmas tree. If all you got to do is just work so hard, your own country, y'all all work hard, should be lit up like a Christmas tree. I love some African people. I love some Latino people. I love some Swedish people. I love people, some Asian people. I love all types of people. As a collective, though, the ones that's talking for y'all, that's getting up on these podiums, that's getting up on world stages, are trying to erase me and my ethnicity and my lineage, and I'm not going for it. It's disrespectful.
What some people may not know is this idea that immigrants built this country and the idea of the American dream didn't start with TikTok conversation, but it's been happening for quite some time now. It was historically weaponized against Black American people as a way to dismantle their case around things such as reparations. In 1965, James Baldwin had a debate against William Buckley centering a very similar topic. Baldwin argued that the idea of the American dream, or America being the land of opportunity, came at the expense of the Black American and or African American.
Not an overstatement. That I picked the cotton and I carried it to market and I built the railroads under someone else's whip for nothing. The Southern oligarchy, which has until today so much power in Washington, and therefore some power in the world, was created by my labor and my sweat, and the violation of my women and the murder of my children.
But Buckley, on the other hand, his argument was no, because my grandparents worked in this country too. And he used that argument as a way to support his stance that Black Americans' experience in this country wasn't enough to fully support the laws and policies that uplifted civil rights only.
This is a capitalization that was not created exclusively as a result of Negro travail. My great-grandparents worked too. Presumably yours worked also. I don't know of anything that has ever been created without the expense of something.
In this debate, James Baldwin didn't undermine the contributions of other people or how the United States exploited cheap labor, but rather he emphasized and highlighted who built this country because he knew that the U.S. has historically used the American dream at the expense of Native American and Black American people. So now what? Where do we go from here? Black History Month was originally started to address real issues. And as Black people in America, sometimes we're going to have uncomfortable conversations. We are human. Say it with me. We are human. Just because we're all Black doesn't mean that we're going to know everything about one another. And while we are learning things about one another and learning things about our first and second generation cousins and learning things about Black American people who have been on this land for hundreds of years, it's going to take for us to be mindful of the language that we use.
So the Nigerian country singer Shaboozey is receiving some backlash after saying the immigrants built America whilst receiving his Grammy. And obviously I'm not Black American, I'm Eritrean. However, I still think it's quite ignorant that he said that, considering the fact that without Black Americans fighting for their civil rights and the abolition of Jim Crow, the 1965 Immigration Act wouldn't be passed, which means immigrants as a whole would struggle to come to America and be able to make money and start businesses in America. But not only that, the fact that he himself is from Nigerian descent, yet he's literally accepting a Grammy Award for a genre of music that Black Americans created. He's a country music singer. Without Black Americans, your career wouldn't exist. So I feel like everyone should be a bit more mindful and give Black Americans the credit they deserve.
Now, he's since posted this message after receiving backlash from Black Americans saying that Black Americans actually built this country. And in his response, he basically says that he was just trying to honor his parents who came from Nigeria and made a way for him, and that he also respects and is grateful for all the Black folks who came before him. Now, I don't want to speak specifically to Shaboozey's Grammys acceptance speech or the statement that he put out, but I do want to speak to why I believe that there's so much tension between people who are born to Black American parents and people who are born to Black non-American parents. As someone who is a child of both a Black American parent and a non-American Black parent, Jamaican Black parent, I can say that I think a lot of the root of the issue is that people who migrate here have these misconceptions about Black American folks that are rooted in misinformation. A lot of non-American Black folks come over to this country with the idea that American Black folks are lazy or they don't want to work hard enough, and that if they've come over here from another country and they're able to succeed, that Black Americans are just not doing enough. And there's a lot of context that is missing. Number one is that systemic racism and Black oppression looks totally different in America than in most of the countries that people migrate from. And the only real way for you to know that is to know the history and the context to which Black people have existed in America. The other thing is that the curriculums used abroad tends to be more rigorous than the curriculum we use in America. And education is based on class in other countries. So not everybody is able to access an education. And the people who are migrating over to America are people who are fortunate enough to be able to access an education where they're originally from. So in most situations, you coming over here means that you had access to a really strong education, and that allows you to be successful when you get here, versus Black American folks don't have the same level of access to education. And we know that a lot of the communities where Black people exist are underfunded. The people who lack access to education in the countries that people migrate from are not able to migrate here. They're not able to. So it doesn't really, it's oranges to apples.
Immigrants did not build this country. In fact, they built on top of a foundation that was already laid down by Black Americans. Adding to this, you have who we know as the original inhabitants of the United States, tribal groups, whose history has essentially been pushed to the back. Making statements like this is dangerous, especially during Black History Month, a month that is meant to honor the inventions, the creations, the history of Black Americans in the United States. This was started by Carter G. Woodson. Carter G. Woodson was a Black American. I actually made a video on Carter G. Woodson in the past, so you can check that out as well. The reason why Black History Month is so important is because oftentimes Black American history is pushed to the back and it's forgotten about. By saying that immigrants built this country, that is erasure. On top of this, Shaboozey's biggest hit, I can argue, is off of the back of a Black American, Jaquan, who released the song Tipsy in 2004. So you release a country song that's a rendition of that. On top of this, you are occupying a genre that was started by Black Americans, country music. And it isn't lost on me that Amen is a gospel country song, gospel being another genre that was also started by Black Americans. Now, I'm one of the many voices that is pushing back against this claim that immigrants built the United States. I know that Zoran Mamdani made a similar statement back in the past, and that was also a point of contention for many. And him having a huge platform, it's very...
I had a couple of people mentioning the Chinese and others building railroads, which, feel free to look it up for yourself, was somewhere in the late 1800s. Riddle me this. What year were the enslaved forcefully brought to Jamestown? I'll give you a hint. It was 2.5 centuries before any railroads were being built. 2.5 centuries of forced and unpaid labor that has grossed this nation in the trillions of dollars. And let me just say, I for one don't put Shaboozey in any form of hierarchy. As someone who openly expressed that his stage name is the literal mispronunciation of his actual last name.
I'm Nigerian American, so my last name is actually pronounced Chibueze. And just growing up in Virginia, like everybody just did not know how to enunciate my name. So they was just like, Shaboozey. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna just run with that. Telling my homies, should that be my artist name? I was pretty skeptical about it, but they was like, nah, that's hard.
Mind you, he's from Woodbridge, Virginia. It's 30 minutes away from DC. The continued dismissal of the contributions of Black Americans in this nation is also a continued dismissal of the plight of Black Americans in this nation. When we look at where it is that we are with the attack on immigration, we are rerunning through this cycle of violence. Because when we have tried to educate folks on who it is that we are and our experiences in this country, folks want to start from building railroads, but not picking cotton. Folks want to start after the Emancipation Proclamation, but not the running of bare feet in the middle of the night with the hope of escaping the tyranny of rape and castration and the open experimentation on Black people. So when folks see 5-year-old Liam Ramos kidnapped by ICE, everyone is wondering, how could this happen? But I immediately thought about Emmett Till and his kidnapping in the middle of the night and what he looked like during his open casket funeral, which you can see his casket in the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It is far less about Shaboozey's willful ignorance, but a collective willful ignorance that misinforms people that they deserve a level of humanity that we don't.
Your parents came over to United States post 1965. You know why they came over to the United States? Because of the blood, sweat, and tears of African Americans. African Americans made sure that every single person of color was going to be able to have rights in America, immigrants or not. So after this, you guys came over after the blood, sweat, and tears of Black people. Immigrants did not build America. You guys won't even be able to come to America if it was not for Black people. Okay? Remember that. Nigerians are your Nigerian family is literally benefiting from the fact that Black people in the civil rights movement, and they spearheaded a movement to make sure that everyone in America had the rights and everyone was treated as equally. For you guys to be able to come over here, you guys weren't fighting the fight with us. You guys didn't come until post 1965. That's the reason why you're only a first generation immigrant, and it's not deeper than that for a lot of people. So you guys are saying that immigrants built this country. I agree. They took over the lease on the house that we built, of course. Oh, you guys definitely took over the lease. But to undermine African Americans on Black History Month and not say, you know what, Black people and immigrants built this country. We are all under attack. And to say that immigrants are like the sole whatever, that's just unfair to me. And I have no problems with saying immigrants are a vital factor to American history, because they are. Immigrants are one of the hardest workers in the country. But the problem I have is that African Americans do never get their flowers. Y'all never give us our flowers to say, you know what? African Americans and their contribution to society, they are the reason I'm able to be prosperous here. And when we brought this thing up to y'all basically said that we're playing oppression Olympics and we're not the only people oppressed in America and we're not the only people that build America. You guys will not be able to build America or come over willingly to America to build and work for America if it was not for African Americans. And that is a fact. You guys can dispute it all you want to, but that is a fact. And I'm tired of immigrants, of Black people specifically, saying that immigrants built this country, because they would not be able to come here if it was not for African Americans.
Now, I'm sure this gentleman meant no harm, but the physical foundation of the United States economy was built on the backs of enslaved African American labor. From the plantations, ports, to roads, railroads, and even the White House, none of that exists without slavery and the exploitation that came with it. On top of that, the land itself came from the genocide and displacement of indigenous people. No land theft means no United States. And I'm not taking anything away from immigrants at all, because immigrants absolutely contributed later to the development and expansion of America, but they did not create the original foundation of wealth and power in this country. So therefore, when people say that immigrants built this country without mentioning slavery and indigenous genocide, it's incomplete and it's misleading, even if it's said in good faith.
We are a nation of immigrants. This country was not built by immigrants. This country was built by settlers who came here and built this country from nothing.
The wealth of this country was built by enslaved Black people. The railroads are built by Asian immigrants. And every time the US went to war, it imported Mexican immigrants to help win the fight. So immigrants did build this country. The only people who didn't build this country are the people who stole the land and put its original inhabitants to the sword.
Chattel slavery built this country, and it is important to recognize that. People don't want to talk about slavery, but the reality is that slavery in the cotton economy is what gave America its legs, baby. There would be no America without slavery. The enrichment that is immigration did not come until significantly after slavery, right? Slavery dates back to the 1600s, girl, okay? All the way until 1865, where we get the Emancipation Proclamation. And even after this point, there were some Black people who were still being held captive as slaves because they just didn't get the news yet, girl, okay? So when you think about that, how long slavery spanned, okay? And the fact that we get ushered into Reconstruction and Jim Crow, and slaves are now repurposed as sharecroppers, right? Or repurposed into roles in which they are only good for service. They are only good for, you know, functional positions that help prop up the country, not actual careers, not anything actually profitable. Like literally, Black people simply migrated from slavery into something else until we get into the civil rights era. For the people who think that we're arguing semantics, not only is this an important distinction to make so that we are recounting American history and Black history accurately, but also because the suppression of Black history, the erasure of Black history, okay, is what leads to the repetition of these atrocities, not on Black bodies, but onto others. And this idea that Black history and American history, when it repeats, that it's going to repeat with the same people, it does not. It does not. And I think we're seeing a little bit of the proof, but that will never, ever, ever change the fact that the biggest and greatest group affected by American history, affected by the American plight, and that actually built America is Black American descendants of slaves.
Look, I'm a legal immigrant, but I've seen such a shift in the mentality of my fellow immigrants, especially in the last 25 years. When we first got here, the focus was assimilation because we moved here for a reason, right? We left our home, our family, our friends, we left everything that we knew so that we could have a better life here. And that's because America could give us opportunities that our country of origin just couldn't. So our allegiance should be to this country, right? Because we've chosen it. We should want this country to succeed, and we should work for this country's survival and betterment. Somehow we went from that perspective to my loyalty will always be with my country of origin. I shouldn't have to change, and I shouldn't have to learn the local language, and I should not have to assimilate. America was built by immigrants. America was built by people who took immense risks of leaving everything behind, leaving civilization behind, to brave dangerous seas, to overcome famine, disease, and to face the great unknown, to create something out of nothing. And more recently, to take what already existed and make it better. America has been built by pioneers, not by people who come here to fly the flag of their country of origin and live off of benefits.
Before we even talk about immigrants, we have to say this plainly. The foundation of United States was built on the unpaid labor of Black Americans, not symbolically, not emotionally, but materially, economically, and structurally, from roughly 1619 up to 1865. Enslaved Black Americans worked for about 446 years with no wages. Historians and economists estimate that if those Black Americans had been paid even modest wages, the stolen labor value would amount to $10 trillion today. One commonly cited estimate put it at 14 up to $20 trillion, and that's conservative. That wealth didn't disappear, it financed ports, banks, universities, railroads, plantations, insurance companies, and entire cities. Cotton alone, produced almost entirely by Black Americans' labor, accounted over 50% of all US exports. The US was the world's leading cotton supplier, and cotton was feeding textile mills in Europe. That means Black Americans' labor wasn't just building America, it was fueling global industrialization. By 1860, enslaved Black Americans represented about 18 up to 20% of the total US population, yet they produced a vastly disproportionate share of the country's wealth. The estimated monetary value of the enslaved people themselves as property was greater than all US factories, railroads, and banks combined at the same time. That tells you how central Black labor was to the American economy. And even after slavery officially ended in 1865, it just became exploited in different ways. Sharecropping, convict leasing, black codes, Jim Crow laws, and exclusion from labor protection ensured that Black Americans continue to build America while being excluded from wealth accumulation. For example, Black Americans built much of the infrastructure of the South: roads, bridges, and rail lines. Black craftsmen were masons, carpenters, blacksmiths, engineers, and architects, long before they were even allowed to be recognized as such. Many early American cities, from New Orleans to Richmond, were physically constructed by enslaved Black Americans. Even in the 1900s, Black Americans were the backbones of manufacturing in cities like Chicago, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. They were the backbone of agriculture, especially in the South. So when Black Americans push back against the phrases like "Immigrants build America," what they want is their foundation not to be erased. You can add chapters without deleting the first one. This also matters. Acknowledging the Black Americans' foundational labor does not mean denying the contribution of immigrants. America did later rely on the immigrant labor, especially after the country had already been economically established. Chinese immigrants, for example, played a crucial role in building the Transcontinental Railroad in the 1860s. They made up 80 up to 90% of the Central Pacific Railroad workforce at its peak. Their labor was dangerous, underpaid, and discriminatory laws excluded them entirely from citizenship. Their contribution deserved recognition, but it happened after Black Americans had already spent centuries building the economic base of the nation. Japanese immigrants later contributed significantly to agriculture on the West Coast, especially in California, Oregon, and Washington, despite facing land ownership bans and internment during the Second World War. Filipino immigrants became essential in agricultural labor and healthcare. Latino immigrants, especially from Mexico and Latin America, have been and continue to be crucial in agriculture, construction, service industries, and meat packing. Jamaican immigrants and other Caribbean people have heavily contributed in healthcare, education, transportation, manufacturing, and public services. All of this is true. Immigrants have added, expanded, and sustained American growth, especially in the 1900s and 21st century. But here is the key point that often gets lost. Most immigrants arrived to America that already existed politically and structurally because Black Americans built its foundation. Black Americans did not migrate into an opportunity structure. They were forced into creating it, then systemically excluded from its rewards. So when someone says that immigrants built America without context, it collapses centuries of histories into a single sentence and unintentionally places immigrant labor into competition with Black American history. And that is why you have seen that the reaction of those Black Americans we watched in the clips feels emotional. It is not because of their insecurity. They have reacted with intention of correcting what that Nigerian artist said. And here is the truth that I want y'all to go with. Black Americans built the foundation of the United States. Immigrants expanded, diversified, and modernized the country. All of that can be true without one erasing the other. As you have watched in those clips, Black Americans were not saying that immigrants did nothing. What they were saying is not to place their forced labor into the same category as the voluntary migration. And we are dropping this video during the Black History Month. And I want to say this clearly and respectfully. Happy Black American History Month to all Black Americans, brothers and sisters who always come here to watch my videos. Your history is not just about suffering, it's about endurance, innovation, culture, resistance, and nation building. From music, fashion, language, and political thoughts. Black Americans did not just survive America, they shaped it. Black American history is an American history. Not an appendix, not a footnote, not a subsection. And for all immigrants watching this, recognizing the truth does not diminish your journey. It actually places it in the proper context. It explains why America existed as a destination in the first place, and why honesty about history creates unity instead of resentment. And that is it for today. Again, happy Black History Month. If you are proud of being a Black American and you have watched the video until this time, drop a fist emoji in the comment section and say, I am proud to be Black. I am proud of Black American journey. That was Mr. T. Ciao.